Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Europe is burning. Literally, over 227,000 hectares have been scorched by wildfires this year alone, more than double the annual average. As fires rage from Greece to France, we'll explore how climate change is fueling this surge, the ecological and human toll, and what policy responses and scientific strategies are urgently needed to mitigate future catastrophe. To help us understand these issues, we're joined by Professor Maciej Zalewski of the European Centre for Ecohydrology at the Polish Academy of Sciences. Professor, welcome to TVP World and thanks for taking the time.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. So, double the annual average of devastation in terms of land coverage caused this year. Why?
I think generally the progress of climate change is really accelerating and exceeding the expectations and scenario which were formulated 20 years ago. So we're really going toward the hothouse scenario, and the wildlife fires unfortunately amplify this process quite significantly.
Okay, so I mean, you say that, look, 20 years ago, we've been, since then, we've been talking about the impact of global warming. Why haven't we been able to mitigate the effect of these wildfires, or perhaps even the risk of them spreading so far and so fast?
Of course, there are several, causes. First, the higher temperature than in the past. However, big wildfires appear in the past also. So we have to keep in mind that not only last decade, like for example in Australia, we had the extremely high wildfire, which some people consider the 15% of continent was burned. So, but quite often huge million of hectares wildfires appear in northern United States and Canada, but more and more going south also this process appear. And generally we can say the temperature is higher and amount of water retained in the system of catchment is declining due to some mismanagement. So resilience of the system is getting smaller also in some area.
Tell me about this mismanagement.
That's why we have to really think about how to compensate. Besides, very often some analyses indicate that 90% of fires are generated by man in many areas. So also the let's say lack proper behavior of the society generate dramatic problems.
When you say generated by man, are you saying that they are deliberately caused, or they're caused by carelessness?
No, deliberately also happens, because, for example, after place when the fire appear, the law often allows to make a developer some, let's say, investments, so construction, new hotel and so on. And this is a well-known process and somehow has to be controlled, maybe more strictly by some local governments or generally. However, very often it's just lack of understanding of threats which we generate by, let's say, creating the grilling, very dry weather in area which are very vulnerable. And also they are having the potential to disperse the fire very fast. So that's many, let's say, type of action. Even the cigarette which is thrown from the car is very often the starting dramatic big fire.
So a combination of carelessness and deliberate action. Now, why does this affect southern Europe more than the rest of Europe?
First of all, Southern Europe has much higher temperature than here. And of course, in this moment, the amount of water, which is, let's say, in the bottom of the forest, for example, is much lower, because loss of water is very high. Second element, temperature are very high, and also very often they appear the coniferous forests, which are vulnerable to, let's say, to fire and very dynamic change of the area of dispersion of the fire in the area.
Understood. Now, what is the impact of these fires, both on global warming, the ecology, and of course the economy of the countries in which they occur?
In economy, it's very serious. For example, in Australia, this dramatic fire was considered that has impact on the level 1% of GDP. So this is extremely high impact on the functioning of the country. However, the emission in some cases, when we have a mega fires with million hectares, like in Siberia, like in northern Canada, in this moment, the sum of the emitted CO2 is almost half of the, in some years, I underline, some years can be half of the emission of fossil fuel burning. So this is dramatic, and if we will not reduce, this will be creating certain very stronger feedback towards climate warming.
So a large proportion of global warming is due to natural events such as this. Is that what you're saying? Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, in the past already big fires appear. I would like to say it is not phenomenon which appear only right now. However, now it's much more frequent and also appearing in bigger scale. So consequences are really very serious, and also we have to make more effort to reduce the probability of the appearance of the fire, take more care about retentiveness of the catchment in area where the human impact is very intensive and complexity of landscape is reduced. In this moment, retentiveness of water and homogenization of the landscapes, especially agricultural landscapes, is very high. All the factors are creating so-called cumulative impact, cumulative vulnerability. And that's why we need a kind of holistic approach in landscape planning, water management, catchment management, to really reduce probability, increase resilience of the systems.
Understood. Very, very powerful advice there on prevention, Professor. But once these fires start, is there more that we can do to contain them, to control them? I mean, the use of drones, for example.
There are many techniques. The forestry engineers, they have a certain rules. They develop quite advanced methods and to reduce probability, even some control fire to put in some area to reduce dispersion of the fire. In some critical area, of course, this is based on the very ancient experience, because in the past also the people were using the fire to somehow control the processes and even regeneration of ecosystem in some conditions.
And things like modern technology, like drones, do you think they have a role to play?
Yeah, absolutely. In the starting point, the very fast reaction with using all the airplane, helicopters, and controlling the area is absolutely fundamental. However, when we're coming to the, let's say, large scale, like million hectares, in this moment, the process is already so advanced that rather only atmospheric changes can somehow stop it.
Understood. Professor Zalewski, thank you very much indeed for sharing your analysis and insights with us this evening. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, there's always lots more coming up. Bye-bye.